Rob, were you close to Berkeley Heights or Hackensack, New Jersey?
Upper Montclair.
My husband was when he came here from Germany, he lived in Hackensack for a while.
Ah, okay. I know of it. Yeah. We were just south of Route 3, which ends up in Hoboken. It takes you through the Lincoln Tunnel. Hackensack is right near there.
He used to walk across the Washington Bridge to go visit his mother, grandmother, and sister in New York and Manhattan.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a long walk.
Yeah, just the bridge itself is long.
Yeah. Couldn't afford the bus. Had strong legs.
I want to encourage everybody as we're waiting for the for the time to start. I also want to encourage and we'll probably wait a few minutes as people gather, but please make sure that you have your l'chaims ready at home. Whether for you a l'chaim is water or soda or beer or some harder stuff. Some people have written to me that they need something strong after the Packer loss. That's okay, whatever it is. This is a perfect time to talk about love.
I'll go get my water.
There you go. Let's all gather some l'chaim. Some, if you need something, chaser or something, this would be the time. So that way we can all share together in a few l'chaims, which is definitely a part of a Farbrengen. Right, Mitchell? Right, Jeff? There you go. Good.
Sorry, Rabbi, I had to mute myself.
That's okay. Don't worry. Hey, listen, in a few minutes, we're going to mute everybody anyway.
Okay.
Enjoy it while it lasts. Hi, Carol. Hi, Linda. Hi, Bernie and Susanna. Rachel. I'm just looking across the top.
Hello.
Levi, Yuri. Chaya.
Thank you for the welcome.
Warren Jacobson, look at that. Rabbi Levi Brook, Rav Chaim Edelstein.
Just a couple more minutes, we're going to get started.
Oh, I missed the end of the program.
No, it's nothing. 16 ounces is a small one.
Just going to wait another minute or two for one of the other rabbis here, and we shall get started shortly.
Oh, Rab Chesky.
Is Chesky here?
Yes, I see the handsome rabbi just coming on.
Oh, okay, beautiful. Ah, there he is.
And then there's Chesky.
Okay. All right, everybody. We're going to get started. So, friends, this Farbrengen, first of all, I want to just take a moment and begin the Farbrengen with a little bit of a l'chaim. L'chaim to all of you, to all of us, Jews here in Milwaukee, in Mequon, in Waukesha, all of the suburbs, all of the different areas. We'll make a bracha together and we'll say l'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam shehakol niyeh b'dvarei. L'chaim, 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 everybody. Tonight, we're gathering together for really an extremely important occasion, marking 71 years of the Rebbe's leadership which began on Yud Shvat, the 10th of Shvat, all the way back in 1950. That was 71 years ago. It took about a year, as we'll talk about shortly, before the Rebbe formally accepted upon himself and reluctantly agreed to take on this monumental role. But before getting into the specifics of this Farbrengen, I'd like to begin just with a short introduction to Farbrengen in general. So Farbrengen, for anyone who has tasted a Farbrengen, the word itself, if you say it with me, say Farbrengen, it's therapeutic. It's got some therapy in the word itself. People often translate the word Farbrengen as a Hasidic gathering. The truth of the matter is, though, it's much more basic than that. A Farbrengen literally means people sitting together, people hanging out together. Farbrengen means, first and foremost, that you're not alone. Farbrengen means there are others that share the same fears, concerns, loves, passions as you do. We're in this thing together. We're in this boat of life all together. And if a person is lucky enough to have friends with whom he or she farbrengs with, life never feels like you're alone. You feel like you always have somebody with you, somebody by your side. You feel like you have somebody to lean on when you're struggling. And a Hasidic Farbrengen in particular is expressed with a unique and special joy that permeates any Chabad Hasidic community, as all of you are so well aware. And a Farbrengen draws in people sometimes when they're tired or exhausted, worn out. And when by the time we leave a Farbrengen, we're energized, we're excited, we're invigorated Hasidim. Now, all of that is a regular Farbrengen, a Farbrengen among friends, among Hasidim. This is what sort of, somebody calls you up in the middle of the night, come, let's have a Farbrengen, that's what it is. Now we're going to compound that 1,000 or 1,000,000 times over, because a Farbrengen with the Rebbe is something that's all that and much, much, much more. When we came together to Farbrengen with the Rebbe reminded everybody who came together that in addition to everything that was going to be discussed at the Farbrengen, the Rebbe would always remind us how getting together, how priceless it is. How sitting together itself is a source of blessing and inspiration. And of course, that's true of tonight's Farbrengen and any Farbrengen. But at the Rebbe's Farbrengen, as we'll soon see some clips from, when everybody came together, it meant much more than maybe, a Hasidic Farbrengen often does. There were men and there were women and there were little boys and little girls all together. You had men standing on benches or sitting on the floor, women and girls in the balcony, straining to see the Rebbe, to catch a glimpse of the Rebbe. There were little boys that were huddled under the Rebbe's table and by the Rebbe's feet, literally sitting there, trying to soak in a little bit of that feeling and that inspiration and that warmth that was the Rebbe's Farbrengen. You see sometimes elderly Jews in their 80s and 90s sitting behind the Rebbe, straining and struggling, sometimes at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning as the Farbrengen continued, struggling to keep awake and determined to be there, to be present at these monumental events that were the Rebbe's Farbrengens. There you would find great rabbis, leaders of communities, philanthropists, people who were great in so many ways in their own right. They'd be there and make their way to the Farbrengen, and they couldn't miss it. And together with them were the simplest, a college student, a down and out person who's struggling to make a living, somebody who has lost everything, a pauper would sit shoulder by shoulder with the wealthy. And there's a certain equality that existed, a certain unity that existed that really blurred all lines because everybody shared equally in the experience of the Farbrengen. And the Rebbe, when the Rebbe Farbrenged, he was like a special Farbrengen conductor. The Rebbe would lead the audience in deep, profound philosophical passages of the Torah, explaining them, challenging the conventional wisdom in its explanation, and even more so in its application, how it relates to us. And he would speak about Talmudic passages and Kabbalistic passages, to halachic issues, to issues of the day, to politics or any other issue, parenting, raising children, the American public school system, foreign affairs, local neighborhood issues. All of these things were open for the Rebbe to discuss and to bring in, but always with new insight, new inspiration, and new meaning that the Rebbe shed on these issues. And in between the Rebbe's talks, there was an incredible energy where people, the audience was given a chance sort of to reflect on what the Rebbe spoke about for a few minutes. And the way in which that's traditionally been done in Hasidic circles is by singing a nigun, by singing a Hasidic melody. And each one of them has its own unique tenor and rhythm, some of them more reflective, others more joyous. And the Rebbe at this time would have the people would raise their glasses filled with grape juice or wine, and the Rebbe would make personal eye contact among thousands and thousands of people who were present. The Rebbe would make eye contact with each individual and sort of create that bond, that personal bond in the sea of people, where you knew that the Rebbe saw you and you saw the Rebbe, you caught his eye. And the Rebbe would say l'chaim and offer you a blessing, a personal blessing in all of that. And it came with a nod, a l'chaim, sometimes a smile, very brief. And yet, for all those who experienced it, it felt like a lifetime. All in all, if we think about the Farbrengen, it was really, truly a transformative experience. It really lifted you. You found yourself in this shul, in the synagogue, surrounded by thousands of others. Sometimes it went on for 4 or 5 or 6 hours. I remember emerging from a Farbrengen from the basement of 770. It was this large cavernous basement with thousands of others. And there were times that we emerged from the Farbrengen and all of a sudden we looked outside onto the street, onto Eastern Parkway with cars whizzing back and forth. You had to get your bearings and remember that you actually existed in the world. Because the Rebbe took you to places intellectually and otherwise. He lifted us up. He lifted us up to a different frame of being, a different frame of mind. And this was some of the power of being in a Farbrengen with the Rebbe. And so we hope tonight to bring you a little tiny taste, a beginning, what we call in Yiddish a Vorspeise, a little hors d'oeuvre of what a Farbrengen is. And the truth is that our hope is, if we can do this well, our hope is to slowly, maybe over the course of time, to introduce you to maybe bigger sections, larger sections of a Farbrengen that you can each enjoy either together, collectively, on our own, in small groups. But let's start tonight, again, please join me in our preparation for the Farbrengen with another l'chaim. We say l'chaim to life, but l'chaim means not only to life, but means to invigorated life, to Hasidic life, to Jewish life, to coming to appreciate what real life is about. I mentioned earlier, I'm almost embarrassed to mention it because it's a Farbrengen, so what kind of connection is there? But people are, we live in Wisconsin, and people, I've been told that the Packers lost and it's the end of the season. I want to remind everybody that's a distraction. The purpose of the Packers is to be a distraction from real life. Imagine, though, if we could infuse our real life with a little of the excitement and the anticipation and the heart pounding in real everyday life, in our Jewish life. Imagine if we could have that excitement, waiting for the next moment that we can do a mitzvah, waiting for kickoff. When am I going to be able to put on tefillin? It's dawn. I can now lay tefillin. Waiting for 18 minutes before Shabbos when I can light the Shabbos candles. So that's what a Farbrengen is. A Farbrengen is about bringing the juice, bringing life, bringing vitality into our Yiddishkeit, into our life, into real life. So we start with L'chaim. L'chaim, everybody, thank you for joining tonight. We have a wonderful program. And please, you got it. This is a participatory event. Don't be spectators. You got to join in. Like I said, if you have a little mashka, that's great. A little wine, a little grape juice, a little water, whatever it is. But you got to get into it. L'chaim, l'chaim. Okay. We're about to show you a video of the talk of the Rebbe. In the course of the years of the Rebbe's leadership, the Rebbe held more than 1,000 Farbrengens. More than 1,000. Each one of these Farbrengens on average, I don't know if it's exact, but could have been somewhere around maybe 4 to 5 hours on average. That's a lot of Farbrengens. None were more memorable than the first public official Farbrengen that the Rebbe held. This Farbrengen was held on January 17th, 1951. It was a Wednesday night. In our calendar, it would have been, let's say, last week, Wednesday approximately. The witnesses to that event, they described the incredible electricity in the room. This was the yahrzeit of the previous Rebbe. The previous Rebbe, the Rebbe's predecessor, his father-in-law, after 30 years of serving as the leader of the Chabad movement that had seen incredible change. The previous Rebbe himself had been imprisoned, had been tortured, had been convicted of capital crimes and sentenced to death in Russia, and miraculously released. He then fled, came to Latvia and then to Poland, and finally moved the movement over to America in 1940. 10 years later, in 1950, after having suffered together with the rest of the Jewish world the ravages of the Holocaust, the previous Rebbe, he passed away on the 10th of Shevat in 1950. Over the next year, the Rebbe refused the requests of the Hasidim to officially take the helm of the movement. And that night, in 1951, that fateful night, the Rebbe finally acquiesced and agreed to accept that role. On that night, the Rebbe, he delivered his first official Hasidic discourse, which I don't know if we'll have time to talk about it tonight, is was unique to the Rebbes themselves, that only a Rebbe would say a mimer, an original, usually deeply Kabbalistic, new revelation of Torah thought. And it was said with a special sing-song tone, and it came with an introductory nigun, a very profound, contemplative tune that was sung by the assembled. Everybody would be in with profound silence, and the entire crowd rose to their feet prior to the mimer. It was a very, in addition to the great revelation that everyone present felt, it was also, there's much drama surrounding it with its preparation and the standing and all of this. During the course of the Farbrengen that night, in addition to delivering the mimer, that was a first for the Rebbe, which would then have thousands of mimarim more throughout the course of the next 44 years of the Rebbe's leadership. In addition, He spoke with unrestrained emotion, at times weeping, bearing really his soul, as it were, and speaking with tremendous emotion about his predecessor, the previous Rebbe, as well as the urgency of carrying on the mission and the directives of the previous Rebbe. It was a very powerful and historic moment. But that night also had tremendous poignancy. The Rebbe at that time, he said, listen, we live in America, and Americans expect some kind of statement, some kind of, in an event like this, in an inaugural type event, people expect some kind of major statement. And so he said, I will make an official statement. And this statement, that by which the entire Farbrengen, and for that matter, the entire years of the Rebbe's leadership, the 44 years that the Rebbe was here in this world with us as Rebbe, and the 26 years that follow that the Rebbe continues to guide and lead with his inspiration and his teachings, though the last 71 years can be encapsulated by the mission and the statement, as it were, that the Rebbe gave for his leadership and for the Jewish world as he saw it. In a moment, we're going to hear from the Rebbe himself all about this statement, this mission statement. But suffice it to say that this mission statement, and it's not an overstatement, this mission statement revolutionized the Jewish world. There's no other way to put it. The way in which the Rebbe reflected on Avas Yisrael, on love of a fellow, it infused everything that the Rebbe did, and not only what the Rebbe himself did, but how he directed his Hasidim and the Chabad movement. And I dare say that it has become, in many ways, not as much yet as we hope for, but in many ways, some of the greatest innovations in the Jewish world, even beyond Chabad. They take their inspiration and their energy from this very directive of the Rebbe. The Rebbe speaks, we know that Avas Yisrael, love of a fellow, we're commanded to love your fellow Jew. But what does this mean? What is this love that we're commanded to have? And how important is it for us to feel it? And actually, what role does it play in Jewish life? In the following video, we're going to hear a variety of people speaking about what love for a fellow Jew means to them, and about who inspired them and warmed them up to the idea. And then we're going to join the Rebbe in that historic Farbrengen in 1951 and hear the statement that truly changed the way Jewish people look and feel, and certainly can look and feel, about one another. So bear with me. I'm going to share the screen here, and we're going to watch this. It's only about a 4.5, 5 minute. It's about a 5-minute video, so hopefully everybody can manage that.
This production is made possible through the generosity of the members of the GEM Foundation.
Can everybody hear?
Yes. No. It's silent.
Mendel, we lost the volume. Mendel,
Okay, thank you. Let me
We cannot hear anything, Mendel.
Okay, let me figure out what's going on here.
We
Let me
can
sh-
see.
Option to share your computer sound.
I'm working on it.
That would be the.
when you started, it was working. So whatever you hit then is
I
what.
didn't hit anything. I didn't hit anything. Hang on one second. Chesky, do you have the video? Chesky.
Technically, I probably have it somewhere.
Okay, just 1 second. 1 second. Let me try again. Hang on.
It's not downloaded though.
Share screen.
Yeah, restart sometimes it's help.
Yeah, but if I restart, everybody gets knocked off. Why is this not working? Where am I, Chesky, where am I hitting, this never happened to me before, so I apologize. Where am I hitting the sound?
So it's depending on your computer, it's either at the top or at the bottom, where there's menu options, multiple of them. So one of them, you click on it and there'll be like 10 different options, and one of them towards the bottom is share computer sound.
Test speaker, I switch to phone audio, leave computer audio. Hang on one second. Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's try this again. Can you hear now?
Yep.
Sorry about that, everybody. Here we go.
Ahavat Yisrael means to me just believing in the unique potential in every individual, and specifically the divine potential in each and every Jew.
Ahavat Yisrael is the love and acceptance of every Jewish soul, regardless of their background, religious observance, level of education.
Every Jewish neshama is precious. We all have a piece of God inside of us, so we never give up on Jewish people. We're all part of a big family. I once heard a story, someone asking the Rebbe if he ever gets tired of just handing out bills to thousands of Jews every single day. And his answer was, how can I get tired just looking at diamonds?
The Rebbe inspired a generation of Jews to see the greatness in every Jew. His literal translation of the concept of loving one's fellow Jew was his very life. In fact, the Rebbe made Ahavat Yisrael the bedrock of his leadership.
The Rebbe, for me, has actively proven that there are people willing to share love in order to grow an infinite boundary of unity or solidarity. And the way that you create the infinite boundary is by not judging everybody else.
Throughout his leadership, the Rebbe modeled love of a fellow Jew, and it was infectious. The Rebbe focused on it during his inauguration. In fact, it was his very mission statement.
Is dort demol der Wort, wo der Rebbe hat übergesagt in dem Namen von dem alten Rebben, als wahrhafte Lereyacho Komecho is a Kehle, a wahrhafte es Hawaii Lekecho, I bemele is bazei deselber Seder. A beschas me legt dem Dogisch a wahrhafte Lereyacho Komecho, I dos bazei nit kinstiri so a wahrhafte es Hawaii Lekecho, nur verkehrt, dass noch a Kehle durch den Ruf hat mit a tieferen Verbund mit wahrhafte es Hawaii Lekecho. Da in Amerika ist auch allemal a Seder, a deste Sache will hören a Statement. Und das Statement, da darf sein etwas mit a Chidush Dover, mit a Inge, was im Mavel es erreihen. Ich bemeile das, ich weiß nicht, das darf Mavel sein es erreihen, aber ich will hören a Statement, hat der Rebbe gesagt, dass da drei Sachen. Als da Avas ist Hashem, und so da Avas Ater, und so da Avas Yisrael. Und unter die alle drei Sachen sein in Kule Chad. Das ist, man kann nicht voneinander teilen. Zwischen einer mit der zweite. Und man handelt, wie bald das ist Kule Chad, und das ist auch Kule Chad, wie ein Netz im Seins. Das ist, aber ist dämmelt, ist dort der Klall, als ein Ingen Atzmi. Wenn man halt so kann und ein Teil davon ist, hat dämmelt, hat der Tefis Kule, als bringt auf Chassidus B'Shem Baal Shem Tov bringt es auf B'Shem Rishonim. Also etzem kishat Tefis b'Miktsose hat Tefis b'Kule. Und wie bald als hat die alle drei Sachen seinen Kule Chad, ist in was für Achilek mit Ton chappen, darf man wissen sein, am Chapton alle drei Sachen. Bemele darfen alle wissen, aber schaß man chapt so chon onavas Hashem, ist das nicht eine Sache, was man kann damit jetzt sein, und man kann sich damit halten, eben mit Hoben Avas Atere und eben mit Hoben Avas Yisrael.
If you're going to unlock your potential and be your very best, you're going to have somebody see you like that and inspire you and encourage you to do that. The Rebbe to me is like the ultimate coach. It's the closest thing we have in this life for having somebody seeing you from God's perspective.
From that small room in Brooklyn, the Rebbe's vision was manifest over the years that followed, in the millions of people that he taught and touched. It is, perhaps, the greatest mark he left on each and every one of us.
I'm sure everyone who is watching this Farbrengen here today has seen many other Farbrengens. Very large room, right? Thousands of people. Contrast that with the clip of the Farbrengen that we just said. It all started that night. Small room, a small crowd, but a very big statement. But what's so big about it? What was so shocking about it? What was so unique about the idea that loving your fellow Jew has to be at the core, has to be at the foundation of serving Hashem? The Rebbe was telling us that keeping Shabbos is not good enough. Studying Torah is not good enough. Having a kosher house is not good enough. If it's not permeated with the love of your fellow Jew, there's something at the core that's absolutely missing. Rabbi Aaron Rakefet is a prominent rabbi in Israel. He tells the story that when he was a teenager in the 1950s, he had an opportunity to spend Shabbos in Crown Heights. He was very curious. It's a new Rebbe in Chabad, right? A young man doing things a little bit differently. He wants to know what is the Rebbe about. So he spends Shabbos in Crown Heights. He's at his host, they're sitting at the Shabbos table, and this young teenager says to the host, right, tell me, right, what's this Rebbe all about? What's Chabad all about? What's different here? And the host said, I'll tell you. He says, imagine, right, a particular, very religious, observant Jewish organization builds a mikveh in a community. Right? And then there's another very religious, very observant organization builds another mikveh in another community. What happens? What always happens? Community A says the other mikveh is not kosher, it's not good enough, it's not proper, it's not holy, the rules are wrong. The other community sends a letter back to the other community, no, your mikveh is not kosher, your mikveh is lacking, your mikveh is flawed. Says, what would the Rebbe do? The Rebbe would write a letter to each of those two communities and say how beautiful, how precious, how valuable, right? How cherished it is that you are reaching out, that you are building, that you are growing, that you're doing things and making more mitzvahs accessible to people. This person said to Rabbi Rakefet, says, that is the message of the Rebbe. Positivity, right? Uplifting, enthusiasm, love, energy, encouragement. This was something that was not seen before, and was from there that Chabad grew, and it really was the driving force behind Chabad for all these years. Now, it's something that's very easy to say, right? Love your fellow as yourself. But the question, of course, is how do we do it? And that's what we're going to see in the next two video clips. We're going to see interactions and interviews of people, as well as some clips of the Rebbe, and how this idea was applied to their own lives and had dramatic changes and effects. So we'll proceed to the next clip.
Every Jew has a soul that is precious. The Rebbe did not preach blind love. His eyes were open to see the beauty in every Jew, and helped so many others to see just how precious each one is and how powerful. In public talks, personal encounters, and in his conduct, the Rebbe emphasized this reality. Mr. Louis Goldstein is a businessman from Sydney, Australia. In 1989, along with his wife and son, he had an audience with the Rebbe.
I had never seen Yechidus before, so the whole thing was quite fascinating. And there were about 200 people there the first time we went. And the Rebbe spoke to us first, he gave a sikha, and after that, then it started, you went one by one. There was no order, there was no, you could go at any time, line up and just wait your turn, speak to the Rebbe. But we were quite fascinated by the whole thing, so we watched everyone else's Yechidus, and the Australians went last. And I was actually standing in front of the Rebbe, maybe 10 meters away, and just couldn't hear a word, but I was watching the whole thing, and it was just the most amazing thing just to watch Yechidus, to watch the Rebbe in action. And my wife and I were holding our son Zalman, and he was, I think, maybe a year old. So we had Yechidus with the Rebbe. So I asked the Rebbe for a bracha for my brother.
I'd like to ask just one bracha for my brother, who has absolutely no shaykhs to Yiddishkeit at all. His name is Meir Ben Etta. Absolutely no shaykhs at all to Yiddishkeit.
He was born a Jew. That means he's not only shaykhs to Yiddishkeit. He is a Jew, and that is his essence. And you must only reveal it by removing the dirt or the shame that is covering it up. And that depends on his relatives, and especially brother or sister-in-law. That means you.
So I got a lesson in Chabad Chasidus 101 from the Rebbe. 101, one-on-one from the Rebbe directly. So, and that, I realized that encapsulated the entire philosophy of Chabad in a nutshell, in one sentence, where when you look at another Yid, the fact that they're born Jewish, that's all that counts. And some people need polishing, some people don't. We all probably need a bit of polishing, and that's what the Rebbe was telling me. And it was a very powerful point.
Verjeden sich jedu, wo der Baal wurde gesagt, dem Wort von dem Baal Shemte. Kisiya atem eretz chefet, a Jiden und jeder Ried befragt, wird geglichen zu eretz chefet zu Ort. Was eretz wird angerufen eretz chefet. Was wird angerufen eretz chefet? Der Fall, was innewenig liegen, a wohn im Tevis und Margolies, sie liegt a Mayim Chayim. Sie liegen kamo Eitzet, was sie seine Gonus bemavi ho Adomo. Der Unterschied nur, sie da bei ihnen, was sie gefühlen sich Korev, zu dem Eberflach, bemele darf a bissel a Grobton. Gefühlt mir gleich dem Even Tevo, gefühlt gleich dem Mayim Chayim. Sie da a Sehne, was mir darf groben tiefer und noch tiefer, kdei a Robsunem mit alle Inyonim, Hamalimim und Mastirim.
Mr. George Rohr is a businessman and philanthropist based in New York City. In 1991, he helped found a beginner's prayer service for the high holidays at his synagogue, KAJ, in Manhattan.
When I moved to New York and got married, I started a beginner's minyan at our shul here in Manhattan. It was basically an introductory service for Jewish adults that may or may not have had the benefit of a Jewish education. And I was leading it with not a great deal of preparation, but nevertheless I did my best to lead it. And it turned out to have been a success. I remember, as I always did every year, going to visit the Rebbe for Lekach between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I thought to myself, this year I'm going to be different. I'm going to give the Rebbe some nachas. I'm going to give him some good news and make him happy and proud and smile and especially make him proud of me.
I'd like to let the Rebbe know, I hope he has some nachas from the following. This Rosh Hashanah in our shul, I started a minyan for beginners who don't know anything. We had 200 people. 200. On Rosh Hashanah, and Yetz Hashem for Yom Kippur we'll have also. And the Shabbos, we started the first regular Shabbos, we had about 50 people.
Shabbos, last Shabbos.
People without any background to start learning a little bit about Yiddishkeit. And I'd like the Rebbe's bracha. We should continue.
And I expected a big yasher koach from the Rebbe. I expected the Rebbe to give me a high five and to congratulate me and so forth. When I said the words Jews without any Jewish background, the Rebbe's smile disappeared. And he looked at me with his piercing blue eyes, and I knew that I had said something very, very wrong. And I didn't know what.
He'll explain to all these people they have a real background of Avram Yitzchak Yankee. And so the Rivke Lochoveleh. That's for you, and that's for the people who have no background.
The Rebbe was saying, this is royalty you're talking about. These aren't Jews without any background. This is royalty. And that was the Rebbe for every Jew. For the Rebbe was royalty.
Dem Mieden, was ruft sich an der Weile, Beshem Ache, is a sichere Sache, a sechet von Eretz Chefetz, a sichere Sache, a Baljidach mimenu niedach, a sichere Sache, a verbunden mit Mekel, Mayim, Chaim, Avaya Lekim, Chaim, mit darf sich mehr nicht haben Geduld und nicht jallen in Tirche wie Gie, bis zum Messias Nefesh, Kipschuto auf der groben Sache und aufgroben dem Bejer, bis waren Zetonim Stürmen, dem Mayim Chaim Shebetecha, aber das gewähnt der Wede von den Baal HaYilul.
The nigun, Hasidic melody, plays a central role in Jewish life. It is the soundtrack of the Hasidic experience. A Farbrengen is interspersed with nigunim, some reaching deep inside, stirring the strings of the soul. Others soaring high, uplifting and energizing. A Farbrengen was and is today a time for meditation and reflection. The first of 13 nigunim taught by the Rebbe, set to the words of King David, speaks of the soul's intrinsic thirst for connection with God, no matter its present state.
Tzoma lecho nafshi, koma lecho vesori, be'eretz Zion ve'yoyev limoyi. Came back kodesh chazi sichali rois uschoch voidecho. Came back kodesh chazi sichali rois uschoch voidecho. Came back kodesh chazi sichali Lilo Isus choch voidecho.
Can we pause for a moment for L'chaim?
Can always pause for L'chaim.
L'chaim, everybody, please join me. After seeing that and hearing that, L'chaim, to all of us. It's starting to be a Farbrengen. We're starting to feel less alone. L'chaim.
I'm L'chaim. So we'd all like to think that we're quite objective. We can look at the world, we can look at people from a purely unbiased perspective. But the reality is that we carry our biases and we're quite subjective. And when we look at people in a critical way, we're going to find what to criticize. But if we look at people in a loving way, then we're going to find what to love. The Rebbe taught that every single Jew, right, is a spark of God. Every single Jew is as precious as anything that you could possibly imagine. Every single Jew is as a holy beyond words. This was an idea that the Rebbe did not just preach, but it's something that the Rebbe practiced. And it was something that his Hasidim and those who were connected to him internalized in a tremendous way. I remember about 2 years ago, right here in Milwaukee, a Jew went out of their way to do a mitzvah that they were not accustomed to. And one of my colleagues, a fellow shliach in Milwaukee, gave this person a tremendous hug and said, "You're a tzaddik." And he meant it, right? It was real. The love was real. And his statement that he felt his friend is a tzaddik was real. It wasn't hyperbole, it wasn't exaggeration, he wasn't trying to butter the other person up. The Rebbe taught you how to look at another person, how to look at another Jew. There's infinite potential. There's a precious neshama, right? There's a tzaddik that's lying at the core and at the heart of every single Jew. In this next video, we're going to see a few interviews with people who experienced that, who finally were looked at in such a way that allowed them to uncover the infinite potential that existed within them. So while you're watching at this video, I want you to think about something. How would you feel and how would you like if somebody looked at you this way? And how would your life be different if that's the way that you viewed if that's the way that you viewed other people as well? Let's go to the next clip, please.
By seeing the essence of the Jewish soul, the Rebbe showed what we are capable of. He encouraged people to see themselves and others from God's perspective, how even the most minute action is significant and impactful. Rabbi Fishel Jacobs is a rabbi, author, and expert on the laws of family purity. After a successful career in professional karate, he reconnected to his Jewish roots and had an audience with the Rebbe in 1981.
As I walked in, I didn't think I did it out of naivety. I took a tape recorder and I put it in my mother's pocketbook. I didn't ask, I just assumed it was okay because I knew it was an important thing. So I actually tape recorded the entire thing.
God Almighty bless every one of you and all the members of the family, and all things necessary, spiritually and materially, and especially to have much nachas, much pleasure from every one of the children in all aspects.
At this point, the Rebbe introduced another subject which I really had no idea that was going to come up and was out of the blue.
We have received smicha. Not studying for smicha, not planning to study for smicha.
That was extremely difficult because my academic side hadn't expanded very much. I'm in Shir Aleph, which means I'm still in the first class. He said, I'd like to give you, it's a custom amongst Jews to give money for charity. Before, on your way back, you give this in Eretz Yisrael to charity, your parents give this in this dollar. And then that was the end of the yichud. We got up and that was the end of it. This is where the hard part comes in. The smicha was really difficult. It was really a nightmare. That took about 2 years. At that point, my confidence had gotten up a little bit, and I said, wait a minute, it's possible. You can do it. I wrote into the Rebbe, and by now I'm 27 years old, And I said to the Rebbe, well, the Rebbe told me to do smicha. Would the Rebbe give me his blessings to do the head smicha of the head rabbinate of Israel? And the Rebbe wrote back that same day. I got an answer from Rabbi Goren. The Rebbe says, yes, do that. And from that smicha, thank God, I was able to publish. My first book was Chachmat Tahara, while I was in Kollel. It's a commentary on Shulchan Aruch. I published my most famous book, which is Family Purity. I had 7 printings of that book till now. We had a Chabad house at Tel Aviv University. And I was a rabbi in the Israeli prison service. I wrote a book about that. But who thought? People were dismissing me as an ex-athlete. No one saw that in me. No one saw that I could learn smicha. But he gave me that belief, and he gave me that power.
Gesagt beloschen a Gemara, als ein Mensch kann aufstehen in der ganzen Welt, Chayiv Odom Leimer Bishvili Nivre Hoilom, bis wannet, wie die Gemara sagt in Sanhedrin, wie der Monsche mehrere Mal, Alloma Nivre Hoilom Yechidi, aber der Mensch hat beschaffen, der Ewigste hat beschaffen die Menschen, hat ihn beschaffen, nicht wie andere Minen. Als sie gewähren ein paar oder mehrere Suche ist, der Mensch ist beschaffen geworden, ein Yechidi, ein 99er oder Marische. Und wir verantworten das, hat der Ewigste hat dämmelt, gleich in dem Onnips vom Beschaff gemacht, ein Unterschied. Dem soll wissen sein, jeder Mensch bechol Mokim und bechol Zman. A jeder Mensch ist ein Eila Mole. Punkt, als wie in jende beschade Mächten Reger von beschaffenden Menschen. Sie werden 91er Mensch und hat in sich Kehlel gewähnt. Alle Deres, ad Seif Kol Haderes, als darf sich betrachten, jeder Mensch, Seif Kol Haderes, in Zman HaGolus, wo soll sich nicht gefühlen, als ist ein Eila Mole, wo das ist ein Ausdruck von Teras Emes, Bediuk, an nichts nur Stamm, ist eine Welt, ist ein Eila Mole, eine Welt, was ist ungefüllt, mit allen Sachen, was sie darf sein in der Welt, als sie fällt dort gar nicht Chose. Es werden nicht mit dem gegeben, die Pchiro. Soll das herausbringen, Mina Keach und Mina Helen, El Hapeil, Vel Hagilui.
In the early 1970s, Diane Abrams practiced law in New York and taught the nation's first Women and the Law course at NYU. Her husband, Robert Abrams, served as New York State Attorney General.
I wrote a memoir of my grandmother. I think it was published in the early 70s. The reason I came to write this article about her was because I became involved in the early days of the women's movement, the feminist movement and I taught the first Women in the Law course in 1969 at NYU Law School. At the time, there seemed to be a criticism of certain aspects of the Jewish religion in terms of its approach to women. And I remembered my grandmother very clearly, we were very close, as a very traditional Jewish woman in terms of her religious observance, but yet she was so highly respected, and she had such a respected place in the family and the community. So I didn't feel that it was a conflict for women to take their particular mitzvot seriously and have their particular role within Judaism and yet have an equal role in the society. So I was trying to explain what some saw as a contradiction. You know, in our meetings, the Rebbe, I see what sometimes colleagues say, well, how is your writing coming along? You're writing more, because he loved the article. He said this has to be a book. And that day, that was actually a few days after the Crown Heights riots, and my husband and I came to meet with some of the leaders of the community to see what could be done. And I thought I was just going along for him to talk to my husband. And I was very shocked when he said to me, how is that book? How is the writing? How is it coming along?
A double person of benediction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Double portion for you also.
We
You
met.
promised me till you time that God will write a book of memoirs about your grandmother.
Yes.
What happened to the book?
Well, I'm doing some things in that direction, which I'll inform you as it goes along.
It takes you too long yet.
You're right.
You have much more other things to do after you will finish that.
Okay.
May God Almighty bless you and good news.
You know, I think I must have turned beet red. I don't know if that showed up. It probably didn't show up in the video, but how I felt. So actually, from that day forward, I mean, the man had a very strong influence on people. I sat down for the next year. I did nothing but, try and write about my grandmother. I did a lot of research, and it did lead me into many other fascinating, productive avenues. So that was very helpful. It might not be what people usually think of him as, his influence.
Die Licht von Kirchhoffim, von Stern, was Israel sich nimmt schon bei den Kirchhoffim. Und was die Kirchhoffim gefunden sich, in einer Melchag Otzu, in einer gar weite Strecke von dem Ort, wo sie gefunden sich der Mensch, was die Sterne. Von deswegen seht die Lichtigkeit von den Sternen. Bis auf sehr viel, als kann bemerken, eine Schiene, eine Änderung, zieht das ein Stern, was finkelt und leicht wird lichtiger oder weniger, und andere Änderungen, oder sicher, bei jeder Mensch in seiner Arbeit, wenn tut in dem, mit seinem, wie ein Mensch darf tun, es muss nicht auf der Ruf der Kirche ist, oder Ewigster hat ihm gegeben, wird ein Licht, was beleicht nicht nur ihm allein und seine Mischproche und sein Stadt, nur die ganze Welt herum, bis in die Himmel echt, was man kann sich trachten, als ein Mensch sich sehr begrenzt. Ich weiß, es ist sehr wichtig, sie wird tun ja seine Tag, sie wird viel in seinem tagtäglichen Leben und tun die bestimmte Meise, was kann tun in einer bestimmten Regel, in einer Samennefen oder in einer zweiten Nefen, wissen wir von der Dogma, aber man soll als die, was nicht Katmus, aber man soll nicht trachten, das ist eine Kleinigkeit. Und sie kann auf Gemüse nicht, wie wird tun. Der Vater darf sich nicht anstrengen, lernen wir davon. Aber das wird ein Licht, jeder einzelne Meise, auf viele Diebe und auf viele Machschower, was safe wirkt sie echt auf den Diebe und Meise von den Menschen, ist von der höchsten Wichtigkeit für ihn und für die ganze Welt, als ein und einziger Mensch durch ein und einzige Tat, meiste seine, oder Dieber oder Machschowo, kann wirken auf die ganze Welt, wie der Rambam bringt das Aris Klorer, heit in Absag din Halacha.
Perhaps the most famous of the Rebbe's Nigunim has been adopted in many Jewish circles during the special prayers on the major festivals. The words capture one of the most essential Hasidic teachings, the profound love God has for His people.
there's probably tens of thousands of stories of Jews who didn't necessarily see in themselves that much spiritual talent, that much spiritual potential, but the Rebbe saw it in them, and the Rebbe pushed them, and the Rebbe extracted it from them. These stories are beautiful, right? These stories warm the heart, but we have to remember the most important part, that it's very easy to look at another person and to see the infinite potential within them, but we also have to remember that the Rebbe was speaking to us as well, that we have to recognize the infinite potential that exists within us as well. And we have to think, what am I doing up until this point? Is there a mitzvah that I really could be doing, but for whatever reason, I've convinced myself it's not possible, it's not doable, I can't do it due to the current circumstances? But if we really looked at ourselves the way that the Rebbe looked at us, we would recognize not only could we do this mitzvah, but probably another 10 as well. So we're going to conclude the Farbrengen shortly, but we have to make sure that we apply the feelings, the emotion, the love that we felt, that the Rebbe expressed in this video, not just to our friend and not just to our neighbor, but we have to turn it inwards as well and push ourselves to extract that incredible potential that lies and exists with each and every one of us as well. And to make sure that we add another mitzvah and another mitzvah. And when it comes to mitzvahs, we always have to remember that we can add in quantity and we can also add in quality as well. Turn it over to Rabbi Shmatkin. You gotta unmute yourself.
I should know that by now. L'chaim, l'chaim. Join me at least one more time. L'chaim. If we go back to that day 70 years ago, exactly 70 years ago, and we think of that Farbrengen, and as Rabbi Edelman mentioned, it was a small crowd, it was a very small room, packed to the rafters, but nothing like the later videos of the Farbrengens, where there are thousands of people in the room. It was a ragtag group, a couple hundred Hasidim at best. Many of them at the time might not even have had the external look of a Chassid. Survivors of the worst devastation that the Jewish world had seen, just 5 years removed from the Holocaust, with American and Western Jewry. To call it in decline would not properly do justice to the feeling that existed at the time. It was a feeling of lay low, don't make waves. Hopefully my kids will integrate without too much trouble. And that seemed to be the direction of Judaism. Quiet, underground, undercover. And the Rebbe on this night, he showed us what Avos Yisrael means, what love of a fellow means. You see, the Rebbe took the people in that room on that night and every single day and night subsequently. And every one of his shluchim and those who met the Rebbe know this personally. And he uplifted everybody around him to say, you are far more capable than you know. You have in you the potential that you can't even, that you're not allowing yourself perhaps to see. And the same Avos Yisrael that he described for every single Jew who is not affiliated or not in that room, he started it out with this Chassidim. And he convinced them that they were capable of far more than they knew. And that extended to every single Jew that he met. And I don't think it was hard. You know, when we think about loving your fellow as yourself, that's a monumental task. There are a lot of people who I don't see eye to eye with. or I don't necessarily love what they stand for. It sounds like it's going to make you sweat. You have to hold on and love them anyway. I don't think the Rebbe had to work hard for Ahavas Yisrael, actually. I think the Rebbe truly loved them. When you love somebody, you don't have to work hard at it. It's a joyful thing. You really want to be with somebody who you love, a spouse, a child, a parent. And the Rebbe loved the people around him. Many people have asked, why whenever you go to a Chabad home, a Lubavitch home, there's always a very prominent picture of the Rebbe there. And people have wondered and questioned and asked, sometimes respectfully, sometimes not so respectfully, what's this all about? And somebody, interestingly, once came to the Rebbe and asked him that very question. What's the deal with your Hasidim? What's this worship? What's this deal that your Hasidim have pictures of you in their homes? And the Rebbe responded, he said, perhaps it's a reflection of the love that I feel to them. They want to reflect their love, so to say, to me is a reflection, perhaps, of the love that I feel to them. What does this mean? So I actually heard from a colleague a explanation that I think is very beautiful that I want to share, and I'll finish with that, at least the formal part tonight. I heard from Rabbi WI Jacobson, I thought a very interesting interpretation, one that I can relate to. He said that when he looks at the picture of the Rebbe on his wall, to him, it's like a mirror. You see, when you went to the Rebbe, when you encountered the Rebbe, when you met him, you may have walked in trepidation sometimes. Maybe you went by for a blessing. But you always walked out incredibly uplifted. You walked out with a feeling of like, again, I don't know how to describe it other than being unbelievably uplifted. And the question is why? And the answer to me seems to be that, the best example I can give is when somebody cares for you and loves you unconditionally, it's the most unbelievable feeling in the world. Every single person remembers the best teacher they ever had. And almost always, inevitably, the best teacher you ever had was a teacher who you felt cared about you and believed in you. And the opposite, a bad teacher, was one who who you felt didn't care about you. When a teacher knew that you, or told you or convinced you that you were capable of more than you knew, that's an incredible teacher. When you come to a parent and the parent says they love you no matter what, this unconditional love, it uplifts, it transforms, it makes you recognize that you can be better than you even know. You can achieve more than you know. When the Rebbe looked at a Jew, he saw the soul. He saw that perfect purity, that perfection. And when we walked away from the Rebbe, you knew that you had it. His very look, the perspective that he had of you, uplifted you because he extracted with the look. He extracted the depth that you were not always aware that you had. And so this chassid, this Rabbi Jacobson, he says, when I look at the picture of the Rebbe on the wall, I'm reminded of how the Rebbe looked at me. I'm reminded not of how I look at me, but how the Rebbe looked at me. I feel that love that uplifted me. And it makes me want to be the kind of person who would make the Rebbe proud. It makes me want to be the kind of person who the Rebbe sees his soul. Of course you would want to have such a picture on your wall. This view, this vision it's not something that's impossible. As Rabbi Chesky described, this shliach who embraced the Jew and told him he's a tzaddik, and he meant it. This is how the Rebbe wants or taught all of us to view another Jew. And as Rabbi Chesky said, sometimes it's easier to view another that way, but for ourselves, we know our own shortcomings, and it might be at times a little bit harder. But yes, the takeaway tonight is to remember and to think about, as Hasidim, as people, every single person in this Farbrengen has been impacted by the Rebbe in great and small ways. There's not a single person here who's not been impacted personally with their family, with their children, with themselves. And please know, we know that the Rebbe continues to look at us in that way. And knowing that that's how we are viewed, that alone can give us the strength, can give us the knowledge, the insight, the appreciation that this indeed is something that we can live up to and that we can be. And so as Rabbi Chesky said, to finish with that, because that's the most important thing, as the Rebbe would always say, Hamaisu ha'ikar. Bottom line. The bottom line is the main thing. To start reflecting this Avas Yisrael, this love, upon which the Rebbe created his entire vision for the Jewish world, to healing the Jewish world. To start with everybody around us, but to make sure that we also apply it to ourselves, and to know that we are far more capable, we are far more able than we give ourselves credit for. The only thing is we can't sell ourselves short. So l'chaim, this will end the formal portion of the Farbrengen. We want to thank everybody for joining us and for sharing in this short Farbrengen. I hope that this will, I'm speaking now to my colleagues as much as to myself, that this will be a good beginning. I see the interest. We should continue this for all of the holidays, for all of the Hasidic holidays, and we should do more of this in sharing the Rebbe directly, not just as our own personal treasure that we treasure, but I'm saying that I will try to make an effort to do more to share the Rebbe directly with everybody here, so that we can learn together from this great giant and leader, and one who has inspired all of us in our own lives. So l'chaim, everybody. The Farbrengen can now continue. Don't go anywhere. L'chaim. I want to ask Rabbi Moshe Rappaport to please say l'chaim, unmute yourself, and continue the informal portion of the Farbrengen.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Mendel and Rabbi Chesky. Outstanding, inspiring the program. I didn't get to see this before, any of the videos, and I think along with everybody else, I was very moved. One of the things that I was thinking about watching the videos is that the idea of the love of a fellow Jew being a fact and a part of our love of Hashem was not something like a condition, but it came out to be a fact. It's almost like the Rebbe gave us an insight into what Hillel told the would-be convert when he said basically that love of your fellow Jew is the basis of all the Torah. It's because without truly understanding what it means to be a Jew, you can't love your fellow Jew. In other words, you might be nice to him, you might be kind to him, you might be a friend of his, but to love him is only possible if you truly understand what Yiddishkeit is, what an neshama is, what a soul is. Then it's not an effort that, like was pointed out by Rabbi Mendel Chesky, that the Rebbe didn't have to make an effort to love somebody. It was just love, because the same way as someone loves their child. And I think this is something we picked up from listening to the Rebbe's description of what he said to Louis Goldstein, what he said to George Rohr, the fact that every single Jew, what do you mean he has no background? What do you mean that he has no connection to Yiddishkeit? The Rebbe made it clear that a Jew, by definition, is not the body, it's the soul, it's the neshama. And this is something which changes the way we have Ahavas Yisrael, how we have love to our fellow Jew. It's not an act of kindness. It's not something like, I'll be nice to this person. And this also explains why God never told us the mitzvah to be nice to our fellow Jew. He told us, love your fellow Jew. Because this is Yiddishkeit. Yiddishkeit is an appreciation of what I am, of what you are, and we're not two separate beings. We may have separate bodies, but we're one identity, we're one soul. And I think this is really an eye-opener, just watching the clips that were presented tonight, and to think and reflect how the Rebbe saw us. I just want to finish off with a story that I heard, one of the gem clips that was shared a couple of years ago, and it's a phenomenal insight into how the Rebbe saw us. I could almost say that the Rebbe loved us more than we love ourselves. There's a story about this woman who wrote a letter to the Rebbe, and she shared a tremendous amount of the difficulties in her life, inner struggles, some pain, some other struggles she had. And the Rebbe wrote back to her, amongst other things, that I feel your pain. And she was very taken aback. What do you mean you feel my pain? You don't know my pain. You don't know me. What do you mean you feel my pain? So the Rebbe wrote a response to her through Rabbi Shmuel Kaplan, and he asked Rabbi Shmuel Kaplan to give over to her this response. And that is that God willing, in the near future, you're going to get married. And when you get married, you're going to have a child. God will bless you with a child. In the first year of the child's life, the child will begin to teeth. And the teething process is extremely painful. And the child lies awake and cries, and it's a hard time if you've watched your child teeth. The Rebbe said this teething process hurts the baby a lot, but it hurts the mother even more to watch the pain in the child. The Rebbe concluded, this is how I feel her pain. Rabbi Kaplan, please let her know. I feel her pain like a mother watches a child teething. The Rebbe, without question, felt our pain, feels our pain, understands it. And this is not something that we should be impressed with or inspired with, that wow, how great the Rebbe is, but it's something for us to emulate, to try and have the same attitude, to try and truly be in tune, to sense someone else's pain, to truly appreciate what someone else is going through. So I'd like to wish all of us that we should be fortunate enough to bring the Rebbe's example into our lives with not just a kindness to other people and not just, acts of friendship, but a true appreciation of who we are as a people, who we are as individuals, and the great soul and the great identity that each one of us have. As Rebbe pointed out, that the Talmud calls us a land of desire. You might only see earth because you're not an expert. If you would know, if you'd be a geologist, you'd be a scientist, you'd know the deep reservoirs of water or jewels or diamonds that are found beneath the surface. So this is something that I took tonight, just listening and watching to the video clips that were shared. And I think one of the more special moments tonight was watching the Rebbe sing with the Chassidim, was something you saw the oneness come together in a beautiful way. So l'chaim, my friends, and may we merit to see the Rebbe once again with the coming of Mashiach very, very soon.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Moshe. Rabbi Yisrael Lane from Chabad of the East Side. A few words, perhaps, if you're here. I think you're here. Rabbi Lane. Maybe. Well, I don't know. Okay. Since Rabbi Lane is not jumping in, does anybody want to share a few words or reflections upon what we've spoken about here? I'd like to ask you keep it to 2 to 3 minutes, but please, if somebody wants to share something, do not be shy. Go right ahead. I know somebody is not shy. There's got to be somebody here who's willing to share. If not, that's going to be the end of the night.
I would like to share something. I am Elisheva Ehrenreich. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, Elisheva.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much. It is so inspiring. I do need the inspiration all the time, but now even more. But I would love to learn Yiddish so I could understand what the deep meaning of the Rebbe's Sikha. It's just fascinating. I speak German, I know some Hebrew, and I can try to figure it out, with the translation, but that would be so cool if we could learn some Yiddish in our community.
I fully agree. Since Rabbi Lane didn't get on, you got to go to Rabbi Lane and he'll take care of the Yiddish. But in the meantime, Elisheva, don't wait until you learn Yiddish. There are many, many, many videos of the Rebbe with translation that you can find, I believe, on YouTube and other places. If you go to the Gem channel on YouTube, there are hundreds and hundreds of Farbrengens and clips that you can take in. And indeed, it is well worth every minute of learning at the feet of the Rebbe, and there's nothing like it. There's nothing like, it's completely different than getting it sent secondhand from small people like I'm going to say for myself, like me. My colleagues are great, but still, it's nothing like learning from the Rebbe himself. So thank you for sharing that.
Moshe Rappaport's father holds a Zoom Yiddish class Tuesdays at 10 a.m.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you, Rob. When there's a sehr gut zu kommen.
Yeah. Rob, share something else, no? You've been here from the beginning.
Well, I can tell you that after his death, the Rebbe is influencing people. I now see the potential in my older daughter's self that I hadn't seen before viewing the videos that were played tonight.
Beautiful. Beautiful. The truth is that the Rebbe would speak to parents about this often, about the need to, and on one hand, it's counterintuitive, because who better to view the potential than a parent and a child? But sometimes, because we're so close to the child and we love them so much, sometimes our love can even smother them. And sometimes our disappointment can show to the point that we are blind to their true potential. And it can be a problem with parenting that oftentimes parents struggle with, because we have certain goals or aspirations for our kids. And if they don't meet exactly the way in which we think they ought to meet it, we start to get frustrated, and we undermine, or we undersell, or we undercut what they're capable of. And the Rebbe often would remind parents in so many ways, so much of the sort of the teachings that flow through his responses to parents with struggles with raising children have to do with this. And oftentimes the Rebbe would say, I mean, again, it's not that this is being asked, but oftentimes the Rebbe would tell parents that when it comes to being able to influence children, particularly teenagers and beyond, sometimes we're the last ones who are able to do it. Sometimes we need to bring others, friends, family members, other people in the community, because we're too close to it and we get too frustrated too quickly. And other people can be more objective about the greatness that is contained within our children. So absolutely. I mean, the fact that we should all learn from you and from the Rebbe in terms of how to view our children. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? Mitchell, go ahead. You got on mute.
I tried that. I just want to say how we've been affected by the Lubavitch, Wisconsin, the Lubavitch movement, your father to start with, and all the rabbis that I've gotten to know personally, that we've been part of their lives. They made us, they've become part of our lives, and the children we've gotten to know. It all goes back to the same movement, the Rebbe. And I didn't know him when I was younger. I wish I had made more effort to learn more. And we're just fortunate. We're fortunate for you, Rabbi Mendel, and your family, Rabbi Heskin's family, Rabbi Moshe Rappaport and family, Rabbi David Rappaport and his family. We're just, and being on the east side, I can keep naming names. We've just gotten at least 25 years. I can say again.
To make all the Farbrengen online.
Yes, now we appreciate even doing this major task of putting a Zoom Farbrengen online. But our lives have been affected.
And we are very lucky to have you in our lives. Thank you, Mitchell. Liz, I know it looks like you've unmuted, so go ahead, Liz.
Hello, thanks, Mendel. That was beautiful. One of the great things I think about
Actually, I don't remember ever talking about this aspect of it, but being here with you and being together and having this wonderful unity through the teachings of the Rebbe is something that I don't take for granted. I guess I moved away from Milwaukee, an hour away to Madison, a little drive away. And but I think I'm reminded more and more, especially through these Zoom meetings, how the Rebbe unified us, and how it's a pretty special club. And I know it's not an exclusive club by any means. I mean, it's a universal club of Jews. And to me, that's just one of the most extraordinary aspects of the Rebbe and what he created in all of us, which is just this unbelievably special bond. So thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I want to share something, Rabbi Mendel.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And Shavua Tov to everybody. I'm Frida Mandelblum. Just to share a little tiny story. We started Tshuva 20 years ago. My little Ari he just started at Yeshiva University last week. And this Motzei Shabbos, he surprised me. He said, "Mommy, on my way to the 770 Farbrengen." So he never met the Rebbe, and he's one of his soldiers at Tzava.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Robin, are you going to say a few words?
Sure, yeah. So I first met your dad, oh my gosh, over 40
One second.
years.
I just want to time out for 1 second. I appreciate all the personal accolades or whatever, but my advertising budget has ended. So share from you.
Okay, well, I think Chabad has just influenced, I think, my entire family's life in so many ways. My son had his bris at Lubavitch house 37 years ago. And presently, ever since the pandemic has started, I've been doing Rabbi Rappaport's 7 o'clock Zoom every night. And it's just something, it's like amazing, the positivity. If for some reason I'm running an errand and I'm late, or I lose track of the time and I miss it, or I tune in and it's only 15 minutes and I get 5 minutes, I really feel like a part of my day was missing. There's just so much positivity. And I guess after seeing this, it comes from following the Rebbe. So, mazel tov.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you, Robin. Thank you. Let's see, which other brave soul is ready to say a few words? Don't be shy, everybody.
Oh. Okay, it's Sheva. So 15 years ago, I had never heard about the Rebbe, Chabad. It was just not on my radar at all. And then I had the very good fortune of having 2 baby rabbis come to my door at a time in my life that I really needed to be connected to Yiddishkeit. And everything changed after that. And I am so incredibly grateful. I remember going to the first National Jewish Retreat at Rabbi Matisaf's suggestion. And I didn't understand what the Rebbe was and what it was really all about. And when I finally got it, when I got the Rebbe thing, I was so grateful. It's just like so many people here, it just changed my life. And all for the better. I can't even imagine not having the Rebbe and the shluchim that I know and the people that I've met in my life. It's made my life beautiful. So thank you, all of you. And thank you for the program. I hope you do this again soon. I'm in.
I thank you, Sheva. I want to say, I know that I speak for all of my colleagues, that we could not imagine in our wildest dreams life without all of you and so many more like you. That again, we are blessed that the Rebbe brought us together, and so we're able to share together. So we are all very, very grateful to you. And I want to just mention that I heard this from somebody a while ago. today the concept of shlichus, the concept of you said two baby rabbis. I love that. I love that. You have no idea how true that is. I mean, you obviously do. I mean, these rabbis and rebbitzins. I mean, now I'm an old man with a white beard, but absolute pishers. I mean, total pishers. No idea. But with all of the gumption and the chutzpah and the naivete of not knowing any different, and most importantly, with the incredible empowerment from the Rebbe saying, "Hey, Boychik, you want to go to turn over the world? Pazhalista, the whole world's open for you. Go for it." But it doesn't just happen that some kid, he's 19 years old, he's licking ice cream out in Kfar Chabad or in Crown Heights, he's taking an ice cream cone, and all of a sudden he decides he's opening up a center in Zimbabwe. How does that happen? How do you get from Crown Heights to Zimbabwe? How does that happen? And the answer is, from the time this kid was a baby, his mother's milk, he learned and he heard, and he was infused with two levels of Avos Yisrael that we spoke about tonight. On one hand, he was infused with this idea that the Rebbe just exuded in everything he did was, what do you mean you've taken care of yourself? What do you mean you're sitting ensconced in Crown Heights in a Jewish community and you have everything Jewish and you're invigorated and you're living this meaningful life? What about your brother? And what about your sister who are out there who don't know, who never heard, who are lost, or who are getting lost, God forbid? What about them? How can you sleep at night knowing that you have a brother or a sister out there who's not aware of the treasure that they own? That's one level of the obviously. So see, you hear that, and you learn that, and you study that, and you realize, wait a second, this is the most incredible meaning in life, to be able to find a brother, a long-lost brother, a long-lost sister, who actually doesn't even know maybe that they're part of the family, and to invite them back in. That's one part of the Rebbe's Avos Yisrael that trickled down to his students, and actually not just to the official students, but to anyone who wants to listen, anybody who wants to accept that. And the second part of that Avos Yisrael is what we spoke about before, that this little kid doesn't know any better. He's absolutely convinced that his mission and his job, and rightfully so, is the most important job in the world. And just because the guy's a millionaire, or just because the guy's some big macher somewhere, so what? They're part of our family, and they need this as much as anything else in the world. And there's nobody, why can't I do it? The Rebbe told me that I'm convinced that I have it in me. Those two elements are really the entire fuel for the whole movement. And that started that first night. That first night, when the Rebbe made his first speech, he laid out the whole story right there. He put it all down, and he said, this is the way it's going to be for the next 71 years and beyond. So who else wants to say a few words? It's starting to warm up and turn into a Farbrengen. Alachaim, anybody? Greg, Troy, I'm looking over here. Gloria, Lisa, I'm just looking at the top of my list right now. Right across the top. Bernie, Susanna. Anybody? All of a sudden we're going to be shy.
And my wife's.
Who's that?
L'chaim and Baruch Hashem.
Oh, Gloria. Baruch Hashem is right. You want to share something with us?
I love you all.
Oh.
I love being a part of the community. I thank you for such good times.
Beautiful. I want to ask one of our colleagues who hasn't spoken. I'd like to ask, I'm not sure which Rabbi Matasov this is. This is either Rabbi Matasov, Rabbi Yonah, or Rabbi Avremel, somebody with the Chabad House in Madison logo. Please reveal yourself and perhaps and share with us a few words. I guess not. Well, Let's see. Anybody else want to share something? I have to,
Rabbi Lane is back.
oh, Rabbi Lane.
Yes, I'm here. I know my audio might not be too good.
Please share a few words with us.
Ooh, share a few words. That's a harsh thing to do. Okay. First of all, l'chaim to everybody. Unfortunately, my video was off. I was kind of in and out of the program, so I didn't have a chance to really follow along and participate and follow along. So I hope that if I say something, one of two things, either nobody said it before, and if somebody heard it before, you could always hear it again, because in life, we always can hear things multiple times, and it doesn't do us any hurt. One of the classes that I have, one of my ongoing classes that I have, is a class in the Rebbe's letters of the Rebbe, reading the letters, sharing some of the stories behind the Rebbe's letters, and the Rebbe's response to them. So one of the letters that we recently discussed in the class, and I mentioned this in Shalom Shabbos, there's an organization that was responsible for collecting money for yeshiva students and giving them coats. I just want to give some background so we understand what's going on over here. You know, in today's day and age, when you send a child to school, so today you pay tuition, you pay room, you pay board, you give the kid spending money, and you give them a phone, and you give him a membership at a local gym, and you give him a Starbucks card to be able to buy whatever he needs, and you take care of all the kid's needs, and you put into his retirement fund also. But back in the day, it didn't work like that. 60, 70, 80 years ago, when a student rocked up to yeshiva, oftentimes the student didn't have parents, could have been a refugee, came with nothing but the shirt on his back. So this organization was established to be able to fundraise, to collect money for the students, and to be able to give them winter gear. Every time winter came around, coats, hats, scarves, gloves, boots, etc. So one year they wrote a letter to the Rebbe, and the letter that they wrote was that this year we didn't disperse any money to be able to purchase things for our students. Why not? And again, we don't have the original letter that they wrote to the Rebbe. We only have the Rebbe's response, because we're looking at the Rebbe's letters back. So it's obviously in the letter they wrote that the reason why they didn't disperse any money is because they didn't have, which is a great reason, right? That somebody asks you, why don't you have the latest iPhone? Because you can't afford it. You don't have money. It's very simple. So not having money is the best reason not to spend money. Makes a lot of sense. So they wrote to the Rebbe that this year they didn't disperse any funds because they didn't have any. So if you don't have money, it's a great reason not to give. So the Rebbe, with his dry sense of humor, the Rebbe responds, and the Rebbe says, congratulations. You must be the first organization in the history of Chabad that only operates in the black, not in the red. You ever say, I never heard such a thing in my life. Every single organization operates not because they have $5 in their pocket and they need to spend it. They operate because there's a need. So the Rebbe tells them, the Rebbe says, I don't understand. If you have no money to disperse, and there's yeshiva students who don't have a coat, how does you not having money make them warm in the winter? It doesn't. So the Rebbe says, so how could your excuse be a reason for them not to have a coat? The obvious question is, but there's no money, so what are you supposed to do? So the Rebbe says, as far as the question that there's no money, it's a very simple solution. Go out and borrow money. And the Rebbe writes in the letter, the Rebbe adds that I'm contributing my own $200 check to cover the cost of the first batch of coats. And God willing, you'll fundraise and you'll find a way to pay the money. One of the things that I personally, I'm always inspired when I read the Rebbe's letters, that if we can use the words getting under the Rebbe's skin, the one thing that gets under the Rebbe's skin is excuses. When somebody has a reason why you didn't do something, why don't you go somewhere? Whatever, I'm tired. You being tired is not a reason not to do something. Just because you're tired doesn't mean that the thing shouldn't happen. It's still a need. And if the need is still there, that's what you have to do. The excuse is a challenge. It's a problem that we have to find a way to overcome. But the fact that there's a reason and an excuse why you can't do something is never an excuse why not to do it. So I often think of the Rebbe's push for action. You know, I say this often, but if we look at the Rebbe's talks often are filled with deep insight, and the Rebbe doesn't ever let up at the insight part. The Rebbe always finishes and says, and the lesson is, the actionable takeaway is X, Y, Z. In other words, in the Rebbe's world, every single conversation, every single thing that needs to happen always must have an extension in something which is an actionable item. And excuses, reasons not to do, we have from here to Texas. That we can have lists, reasons not to do, we always have. But ultimately, the Rebbe inspires me as a reminder when I get up in the morning and I say, today I'm tired, I want to go back to bed. My daughter was up in the middle of the night, I'm not interested in going in shul tomorrow morning. My kid is sick. I can have all the reasons in the world, and we all have excuses, because any time we're called to do something, we all have excuses. At the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves one question. The excuse that we have, does that help keep the yeshiva boy warm? And if the answer is no, then we may have the excuse, but in the Rebbe's book, the excuse is for the teacher in 5th grade. But in real life, excuses don't really work. So the Rebbe inspires me to remember that the call to action and the practical action, that's getting the job done at the end of the day, that's what really counts. And I hope to continue to learn from the Rebbe and to be inspired to continue to do the Rebbe's call to myself and to inspire others to follow as well. As the Rebbe said in that first Farbrengen in 1951, the Rebbe said, between all of us together, we're going to finish the job. We're actually going to bring Mashiach. To God willing, l'chaim, we should all participate. We should all contribute our little bit of action. And God willing, our action, that will be the last bit of action that's necessary in order to bring this exile to an end, and they be together with Mashiach in Jerusalem speedily in our days.
Amen. Thank you so much, Rabbi Lane. And with that, we're going to conclude our evening. And as I mentioned, that we hope to, we'll have to gather the shluchim, and we hope to continue with this type of Farbrengen. Clearly, there's a real interest in it. And God willing, when you catch another email suggesting the next Farbrengen, make sure you come and bring everybody with you. We'll do more of this. Thank you all so very much. Have a wonderful night. And don't forget the takeaway for all of this. Thank you, and good night to all.